Welcome to
We Grown?
Question mark?
I'm Shaun.
I'm Jess.
And I'm Moyo.
And I'm still Marcus.
And first things first,
Oh boy.
what had you feeling grown?
Alright, so I was listening to my girlfriend's sister talk. No, I'm serious. I'm serious. It's bad. I was listening to my girlfriend's sister talk. And I was looking at her and I'm just like, I don't have a clue what you're saying to me right now. And in my head, I'm like, why do they talk like this? And I was like, crap. It's over for me.
It's so bad. Like, I deal with it every day. Like, I'm hip now when they say, like, I'm giving.
Context,
I be in
though.
there,
Sister is how
19.
old? 19.
How's
Okay.
my kids? Like,
What is that, Gen Z?
Yeah,
it's
she's
Yeah.
born after 2000.
Oh, God.
Let's
I don't know. It's a
cry.
2000
Dang.
and,
It's
right?
a 2000 number.
Yeah,
You got a compound sentence for an age, my man.
I'm sorry.
Christmas.
My measure is you weren't here for September 11th. You're way too young.
You cutting out a lot
Sorry.
of people, sadly.
I know that's
Yeah.
the crazy
I
part.
mean, that's a whole folks in the workplace.
Bruh.
I know
That's your entire junior staff. Like,
it's
That's
wild.
crazy.
It's a podcast, it's a video, and more.
Okay.
Our topic for today is kind of a big one that has come up too many times, honestly, but we're still going to touch on it, and that is submission. What it means to us, what it means in each stage of our
clearly
in
know
each
what it
stage
means,
of our
Jess.
lives and our and just where we are in general. So I think we can start off with a broad definition of what we each consider submission, and you can talk about it in each area that you'd like, because I think it comes into just more than relationships.
Yeah.
Shaun, do you want to start?
I don't. Thank you, though.
I'm good.
We can move on to Marcus.
Hold on now. Y'all not going to start off a submission talk with a cisgender male. One of you.
All right, Jess, go ahead. Kick it off.
Okay. So I guess for me, submission, in the context of a relationship, I guess it's more so that you are submitting your personal, maybe possibly selfish, I guess, desires for the better of the relationship, for the better of the two of you, to one another. For me, it's not, solely on the woman or solely on the man, or however the relationship is. It's kind of a mutual thing. So for me, submission is just giving up of yourself for the betterment of and the progression of your relationship.
For me, I would say I kind of would lean more towards, in a relationship sense, the woman submitting to the man. As we kind of talked about this already,
Yeah.
but like the man submits to God, the woman submits to this man who should be submitting to God, and then your kids kind of fall under that.
Mm-hmm.
But in order for it to work, the man has to be submitting to God, so that you know that the decisions that he's making for your family kind of reflect what God's will is for your relationship and for your household. So when people just blindly use the term submission, just like,
It's annoying.
oh, we just submit, and then it's like, you don't submit to everybody.
You really don't.
But I mean, if you're not a Christian or someone who believes in God, I don't think submission in this sense applies. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about that.
I agree. I definitely think it's a Christian principle that so many people outside of Christianity try to use, and it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like, it can work, but just not the biblical definition of submission. It's not applicable.
And I think it causes people to kind of get into situations that they shouldn't be in because they're submitting to someone for a reason they don't know why, and just assuming that, well, that's what people say, but you don't know the backing behind it or why you're doing it. And it could be someone who's like abusive, or like they don't have your best interest at heart, but you feel like, well, he's my husband, or he's my boyfriend, or he's my whatever, so I'm supposed to submit to him. And as women, we shouldn't just blindly do things. And that's something that we've kind of, I don't want to say been trained to do, but society kind of makes women just like these sheep who just do whatever people say. Like, oh, the trend right now is makeup, so all women have to wear makeup. The trend right now is looking this sort of way, so all women just start to do that. And in this same way, it's like, oh, the trend is submit, and so I have to cook for him, I have to clean for him, I have to cater to him. Like, there's whole songs about catering to your man, and it's like, okay, that's cool, but what is he doing for me at the same time? Like, it's not just a one-way type of thing. So the men, what do you guys have to say?
Do you want to start, or do you want me to go?
No, I can go. Especially with the points that fresh in my head. Like, first of all, I want to say, like, I definitely agree with you guys' like definition of submission. At least from a relationship standpoint, there are a couple of things that I feel like I don't necessarily agree with, only because I feel like I'm a heathen. So I don't know a nicer way to say that. I'm very, I guess, agnostic when it comes to like God and things like that, but I definitely believe in a higher power. So I can definitely understand in your relationship, if you both believe in the same thing, that you're submitting to him and he's submitting to your higher power, that he's doing his best for both of you. And I can appreciate that. I can definitely appreciate that and think that's real. I think it applies outside of Christianity also, just because other religious sets also have their own definition of what that may be, even though it's weird in some scenarios, especially like when women can't go outside without being escorted or something like that. But I mean, I could just be coming from somebody who's unaware of like the cultural norms, and for them that may be normal. So I don't want to speak badly on that. It's just, to me, it doesn't make sense. So I can see everyone kind of conflating that with that. So one thing I'd kind of disagree with there. The second thing I feel like I disagree with, and not necessarily to your points of what submission is, it's just more so what the general media makes submission look like. Catering to your spouse is not submission. Like, just because you're out here cooking all the meals and cleaning the house up top to bottom does not make you a submissive wife.
But that's how it's presented, though.
Yeah. Especially to women.
And that's real, and that's definitely real. I think that kind of gets into where I feel like submission kind of differs a little, and I feel like what submission actually is just when there is a competition, not a competition. I don't know why I started a competition. When there is a conflict of interest, or for something, for lack of a better word, that you both are very knowledgeable in the situation. Because obviously, if one partner is more knowledgeable on something, you should default to that partner. Like, this is the person you decide to spend the rest of your life with. This is the person you trust wholeheartedly. If they know more about a situation that you don't know about, I'm going with what they said before anything else. That's first and foremost. But if a situation arises where you're both very knowledgeable in a scenario and you both just have differing opinions, I feel like if you create a space where both people are heard and both opinions are expressed, where you weigh pros and cons and think through it logically, and you guys still can't come to an agreement even after all of those steps have been taken, then I think that's kind of where submission comes into play. At least to me.
See that,
yeah,
I feel like it's needed because, I mean, it's two people. I mean, if you're going to try to be democratic about it, you need a deciding vote. There has to be some principle that you both rely on to say, this is how we'll make this final decision. So that's kind of what I think submission is.
So who would then make that final decision in that scenario?
I gotta say that's gonna differ for everybody. Like, growing up, I really watched my mom like run the house. Like, she took care of everything. You know, she knew what was best for us. My father did everything in his power to support her, and that was cool. I feel like for myself though, I naturally feel like I tend to take lead in situations. So I'm thinking I'm the one steering the ship. And luckily enough for me and my partner, that we're in a relationship where we trust each other, and I believe she trusts me to make those final decisions. So I guess you could say she submits to me, but she'd probably be like, nah, I just let him make the decision. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think, but letting you make the decision is kind of submitting, because is she ever like resentful, or is she like, I told you that wasn't supposed to work, when you make a decision that that might not turn out the way you expected it to?
Oh yeah, absolutely. She's petty. But in all of real life though, like nah, like there's never any ill will or resentment or anything like that. But she will make fun of me if I say something and it's wrong. She will not let me live it down. She holds on to those.
And I feel like that's one thing about submission where I am learning still, because I'm trying to be submissive and and I'm what people call an alpha type of person. I don't always feel like I'm always right. But being married and submitting to my husband, I do have to sometimes just say, listen, it's your decision. You make the final call. Whatever you decide, I will support. But if it backfires, do I say something about it, or do I just be like, child, do I just hold that in my heart and just be like, Lord, I told you
that I was right is strong. It's hard to deny.
It is. And I think I want to say I watched a video about that, like not tearing down your husband in those type of situations, because at the end of the day, I'm wrong too if I let you make the decision that I knew was wrong. So if I didn't say exactly why, or like really give a good argument for you to go the other way, then it's kind of my fault too. So understanding that you submitted to this decision, you have to be confident in that, has made me be like, all right, I can't be too petty, because at the end of the day, I said you had the decision. So I can't be like, oh, why did I let you make the decision? Like, no, stand in whatever you decide. So, yeah.
I really like that perspective. I don't think I've thought of it that way, but I do recognize that I feel myself being less upset if my husband makes a decision that I didn't agree with, but I'm like, you know what? I'm trusting you with the decision, and it was the wrong one. I'm less mad in those situations than it would be, I think, if a situation was he made a decision without consulting me, or he consulted me, I said no, and I'm not giving consent to that, and he did it anyway. Yeah, I would have been like, we're riding this parade all the way. I was right. Remember that time I was right? Oh, crazy how I was right. You know,
funny, funny. It's all
being right is like is like a drug, man. I love being right. I'm sorry, it's my reality.
I already know I love being right.
We all know you like being right.
And I find it interesting because, like I said before, to me it doesn't matter who submits to who in a relationship. I feel like they kind of take on, those dominant, submissive personalities naturally with whatever couple pairings you have. And I always feel like me and Moyo are very similar. So whenever I hear her saying all right, I'm gonna relax and submit and let this person take the lead, it's always interesting to see from a different perspective. And I'm just like, if I was her, could I do that? Is that possible?
And that it is true that we're very similar, but because I am the female, men have egos. And as someone who does not want to crush my husband in any way, I have to be his support, and I have to be the one that's kind of like, I trust you. I know that you can make good decisions. I know that you have my best interests at heart. Letting somebody take care of me is kind of what it is. And it's hard when you're always being the one to take care of somebody to finally be like, no, you got it. I'm trusting that you got it. And yeah, it's definitely different for me. Even with my kids, I'm like, don't do this. And it's they're his kids too. If he wants to do something with his kids, let him. It's a hard thing, and it's something that I have to be very intentional about. Let go of the reins a little bit. Let him do what he's supposed to do. He is the head of this household, and that's how I want my household to be. If I decided that I want to be in charge of everything, I don't think that my husband would necessarily be like, no, I'm the man and I da-da-da. He will let me do whatever, but I think giving him that responsibility shows that I trust him, and I love him, and I know that he's going to take care of me, and that's what he wants to do. So I try.
that was beautiful.
I try. Yeah. But we have not heard from Shaun. And
That's true.
yeah, I don't know how this kind of it's a little bit different for you because you're in
man relationship.
yeah, and so it's like the two men are always like in charge and da 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 da. So how does that work for you guys?
Yeah, so I was the one that definitely was not for this topic whatsoever. If you can't tell already, I guess because when I think about submission, whenever I think about it, it's typically, I mean, based on media, things like that, and it's always in some kind of like toxic environment where it's like, and I don't want to use like stereotypes. I don't want to, but in the media, like from what I've seen, like a woman might go to start speaking, and then like the man's like, and I'm like,
no, that's abuse, Shaun. You can be
so, and I feel like many times that's how you see it.
Yeah, that's how you see
it. One way, and you don't see it the way that you guys described it. So, in my relationship, I don't think me or John. I don't know. It just it depends on the definitions and all that we're using. Like John and I talked about this on a walk the other day, where I was like, "Oh, let me be submissive." I was like, "Come, my king."
I don't know how John ever takes you seriously, bro.
Like, ever. I was like, "I'm gonna walk behind you and let you lead."
I actually hate that. I want somebody to walk next to me. Don't walk.
And then he was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "My king." And he was like,
"Why did you feel like that was being submissive, though?"
I was doing based on the video that we watched, like where the lady is like, "Let me do this." I was like, "Yeah, like you do this, like you, yeah, lead me, like, lead me to Lowe's." We can go whatever way you want to go. And he was like, "If you don't get your butt up here and walk next to me so we can finish having this conversation."
John was about ready to smack you, bro.
He was not for it. I mean, and that's a completely different, situation and scenario than what you guys have referenced. So I think because when I think about it, it's typically based on media's portrayal on like, TV shows. Like when you look at like extreme hyperbole, that's definitely a contradiction. Oh yeah, like makes no sense. Anyways, like a hyperbole where it's something to the extreme for no reason. And that's often what I think. I do know, there are submissive people in the gay community, and that's really just kind of, some people want to be submissive. They might, all right, let me tend to your needs, let me do this and that. And that's fine. You do what you got to do. If anybody wants to be submissive, they can be submissive. And it's really just about how you and your relationship are. What works for your household.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't say like no one should be submissive, or like you should take charge, you should do this, or you should be the alpha, you should lead your house or whatever. Like, that's not my business, not my place. I also don't care, unless like you getting beat on. So it's like not my place. So it's hard for me to speak on this subject because John and I try to be very like equal. So like we try to everything. I mean, it's very much what y'all said. Like we discuss it in private. Like we discuss different situations, his opinion, my opinion, and then we kind of work from there. Are there times that one of us has to back down? Of course. Usually like one of us just doesn't care enough. So then one of us backs down. And then the other one just kind of goes forward. But then also it kind of depends on, I guess, what if one of us cares more.
I agree. I think honestly, I'm sorry, get closer. Yeah, I definitely agree. I think honestly, for the most part, that people don't really see a lot of like the things that you just described, or the things Moyo just described in the beginning of submission. They just hear, your woman should submit to you, and it's like our complete obedience. Like if I say it, do it, kind of thing. And that's just not what it means in any sense. At least not from any sense, from at least a religious religious perspectives that I've heard, and even from just secular perspectives that I've heard. Like it is not bending someone to your knee. Like it's not a Game of Thrones episode.
And I think also as an example, I follow somebody on Facebook, and their relationship, like the woman is like, I am submissive to my husband. And like I know she was like the breadwinner, she was making the money, taking care of the kids and all. And then I feel like the husband felt some kind of way about it. So then he's like, he starts doing his own thing. So then she quit her job. Like they moved, she quit her job, became a stay-at-home mom, and then was like, well, this is what, my family has decided. So I always just kind of question. Well, let me not. I don't want to say I questioned what happened, but I'm just like, oh, that was an interesting turn of events. Only because I know how you guys were before, and then now it's like, oh, this is like completely different than how it was going a few months ago. So that I typically just look. I keep an eye on it. Like, oh, wonder what's happening in this relationship.
Yeah, and I mean it goes back to whatever works for your relationship is what you have to is what you're gonna do, and hopefully people when they make those decisions are not. I don't even know what word to use, but I don't want them. I hope that they're not like giving away themselves and what they truly believe in order to meet someone else's desires or to stroke someone's ego. Like. If she really wanted to work and that was what she wanted to do, it would be really sad that she gave that up because of him feeling some type of way about it.
Because I like went to their house. I see like all of the awards and stuff. Like I'm killing the game. Like I am really good at my job. And then when I saw that disappeared, and I was like, oh well. Yeah. And I only can go based off posts and stuff like that. So I was like, I'm supposed to submit. And I was like, well, is this what submission looks
to
like?
you?
Yeah. I think for us, like, we are Christian and we do take, our relationships with God very seriously. And even in the Christianity, I guess, understanding of submission, I think we're different in some senses because we definitely do that. Like, who knows more about a subject, the other person will defer to them and maybe give that person the final decision. But we also have the understanding that ultimately my husband is the one who has to answer to God for whatever decisions we make for our family. So like we still keep that in mind, but we still kind of share that leadership role. And so like that looks different to people who have that common understanding of, submission, and the woman just lets the man make the decision, and sometimes my husband's decision is you make the decision, and I'm like, all right, I'll do that.
And that's something he should be able to do.
Like
my husband says all the time, ask my wife, and I'm just like, excuse me, Mr. Head of the House.
That's a beautiful comeback.
but the fact that he's the head, people are gonna go to him, and I know I was very annoyed when we were buying our house because they would not talk to me. And I'm like, first of all, we use my income for this because we were like, let's only use one of our incomes because we don't want to get like quoted for more than we want. And so my name is at the top of everything. And y'all keep saying, can we talk to Mr. So-and-so? And I'm like,
I'd be irritated with that too.
I was so upset. And he just kept saying, talk to my wife, talk to my wife, talk to my wife. And it was just really annoying because that was the decision he had made. Like, hey, you're taking lead on these things, but people wouldn't allow that to happen.
Yeah.
That's so wild to me. I can't imagine my name being on a paper. Can I just talk to somebody else, please? What?
Literally.
That's yeah.
And it happens. And I think because you're a man, you might never experienced it, but being married is so different. Like people don't want to talk to the wife most of the time. There's like rare instances where it's like, did you talk to your wife about it yet? Because they know like if it's a house thing or like if he wants to get something done in the house, they'll be like, did you ask your wife? And it's like, he's like, why would I ask my wife? Because for him, he's more into decor and like setting things up. I don't care about that stuff. But when it comes to the money, talk to me. And people when it comes to the money are like, go to him. And I'm like, why not just say, can I have both of you? Like, don't assume what's happening in our household. Yeah. And it does get very frustrating because I just be like.
And I think it has to do with, as well, like, older generations and all. So I remember sometimes it just makes me think, like, when you go out, it's Easter, and then my mom's like, Whitney, you make him a plate? And I was like,
child, to make him a plate.
I was like, ooh.
I don't mind it because I love my husband, but don't be telling me to make no man no plate.
Make me
He got
a plate.
hands.
So, so I often think about things like that when it comes to submission, and I mean, it's not necessarily wrong. Like I said, it's just depending on what works for your household, and some
Yeah.
households have been raised that way.
Yeah.
Ooh, I will bring up a point though.
Mhm.
In the Black community,
Yeah.
that does, from the old school's perspective, like, because it was explained to me by I think one of my aunts, where back in the day, like, the man was the only one that could work, and so imagine being a Black man in a racist, society. He doesn't get any respect anywhere. So the one place he is treated like a king, is treated with respect, is in the home, and that's why the whole make him a plate thing was like such a big deal, because it's the one place where he's getting that respect, that honor as, not just a human being, but as here. Like, if there's one place you're going to get respect, if there's one place you're going to get love, it's at home.
Mhm.
So I do understand it from that perspective, but like modern day times, unfortunately, I really was that person that was kind of like bucking against like a lot of like the traditional kind of mindsets and stuff. But I did want to bring that up because I don't think that's something people commonly know. But I definitely see it from like, we think of it now like, they got two hands.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
like,
I feel like it's when it's brought up publicly.
yeah,
Where it's
yeah,
like
yeah.
made a thing, like a show.
Mhm.
Where it's like, so you're not gonna do this, and then
Mhm.
everybody's like, music stops.
Ooh.
Yeah. And it's also different because, like you said, they were the ones working. So I'm at home. I would love to be like, let me stay home
Yeah.
and make you dinner and bring you a plate and let you put your feet up. But that's not the case. Like, I work too. So at some point, something has to kind of shift where we're working together.
Yeah.
And I started actually watching this lady who she's a housewife, and she talks about all these different things that you're supposed to do for your man. And I'm like, yeah, that's easy for you to say because you're at home.
Yeah.
Like, you have 2 kids that are older and you have nothing but time to do all of these things. Like, she's like, oh, cook fresh meals. Oh, cut flowers. Oh, do this. And I'm like,
Girl.
who has time for this?
Shorty out in the garden,
And
singing with the birds,
Yeah.
swinging around.
Literally, her videos are scenes of her doing all of these different house things while she's in the background just recording and having a good life. And I'm like, that's nice, but who has time to do all of this? If you're not a housewife, it doesn't work.
For us working folk.
Yeah.
Listen, I feel, even if we did have that, even if we did have that kind of money, I don't really see that being our dynamic. Like, I feel like, and I can say this right now because we don't have kids, but I feel like I would still want to work, and maybe he would be more willing to stay at home. And I don't think we've had the conversation where he doesn't mind being a house husband if I'm making enough money for him to not have to work. And
Yeah.
I would be perfectly okay with that. Like, I definitely think, like you said earlier, it depends on the relationship. It depends on the dynamic.
Yeah.
Take care of me, okay? Take care.
My
of
husband
me.
didn't like that though, because he had the opportunity to be at home, and that man was going through it. He was just like, get me out of here.
Yeah, I get it.
So I get that being a stay-at-home mom is not the easiest thing. And that was the other thing about her videos. It was like, that's your luxury. There are stay-at-home moms too who don't have like the mental
Fortitude.
like capacity to do all of this. Like, they've been home all day with the kids, and she, in one of her videos, she basically said, that's your only job and you have an ending. Like, after 18 years, your job is done and your husband still has to take care of you. And I'm like, I don't know about this. Like, it doesn't add up. Like, the math still ain't mathing. He still gets to retire at some point. But
And if you do the math on them hours that you put in when they were newborns,
yes,
versus
all
the
of that,
table
because
up,
Yeah, yeah.
the
they don't
concept
equal.
for her was he doesn't do anything house related. He
Yeah.
doesn't do anything child related. So that means 24 hours a day I'm working with this child for 18 years. The math is never going to add up.
Nah.
So yeah, it's interesting how different people kind of see it. And it was funny because her videos came up when we had the idea of doing this submission video, and I was like, why is this popping up on my timeline? I don't watch stuff like this. Literally, it's Google
Submit-
listening to my
Submit
conversations.
to Google.
Yeah, but yeah, I just started watching random videos, like, and it was, some things she said made sense, but then a lot of it was just like, this can't work in my house.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the key part though at the end is like, knowing your relationship and knowing your dynamic. Like,
Yeah.
if that's not how your relationship is built, and if that's not healthy for you, I think that's the other part that we also are emphasizing, is that if this kind of relationship dynamic is not helpful for you or healthy for you, like mentally, spiritually, all of that, then that's just not, maybe that's not the person, maybe that's not the dynamic you need. Like, there needs to be a conversation, there needs to be something, therapy, because a lot of even just our childhood stuff and how we were raised and what we've absorbed as far as culture and TV and entertainment affects how we go into these relationships. So I definitely think it's worth conversations and things like that. I will say from the sexual aspect, or do we want to talk about
We
that?
can talk about it. Let's talk about it.
Before y'all get dirty. Dang. I wanted to speak about something wholesome, like this not gonna fit after this. But I feel like, just to tie it all together, I feel like for men, especially maybe just secular men or maybe religious men too, I don't know, but I feel like as a man specifically, we need to not tie our masculinity to what we can force other people to do.
Can we get some
I can't snap with
some snaps?
Y'all are silly. Nah, but in all seriousness, I've seen like a lot of people, like for example, like if I'm at home and my wife's taking care of me and I'm going crazy because I'm bored and don't have anything to do, then by all means, I'm gonna go out and work. But if you're at home and you're going crazy because you can't take the fact that your wife is taking care of you, that doesn't make you any less of a man. It doesn't mean that she respects you any less. Hopefully not, because you married the right person.
Yeah.
But like, none of those things have anything to do with your masculinity. You can be a man, you can be in charge, you can be the head of your household while still having things taken care of by other people. It is okay to delegate to the right person. And that's in part of being in charge.
Yeah.
All right, y'all can be dirty now.
Oh my God.
What a transition.
But yeah, like, I think for me, because in school, like, I was very much into sex education. I was a peer health advocate peer health educator who did a lot of like sexual trainings and things like that, just because I was very passionate about people understanding healthy relationships, especially healthy sexual relationships, because so much can happen in a sexual relationship that is not okay when you don't know what is okay. So from my understanding of submission, when it comes to like a sexual dynamic, the person who is the submissive honestly has the most power, because they're the one that's saying, yes, we're going to go this far. No, we're not going to go this far. The person that is, ergo the dominant, is the person that is responding to those cues. Yes, they may control, like, whether it's pain or pleasure or whatever, they are in control of that, but they're not the ones that aren't listening to the submissive person. They have to go off of what that person who is the submissive person says. So technically, the submissive person has that power. And I think in itself, to me personally, I think that's a better example of submission if you brought that into a relationship, where the person who is kind of, okay, you can go ahead and take the lead on this, but I'm going to give you that word, or I'm going to give you, my input, or what I want, or what my opinion is, and then we'll go from there. And the dominant doesn't proceed past or further than the person who is submissive has given them consent to. Consent is so important, not just in a sexual relationship, but also in a regular relationship. Like, consent is communication. It's honestly communication.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that just really requires a lot of trust and respect, and that's really how you can get to that in a regular relationship, in a sexual relationship. So I would agree.
Yeah.
Do you guys think that there's any sort of submission in friendships?
I do. I think so. When we had this conversation, like the first time we brought it up and we were talking about it, I think taking it out of the Christian concept, I was saying that something has to be at the focus, or like the overarching goal or theme or power at will. And for me in friendships, I think the health of the friendship has to be important. Like, any other relationship is an exchange between two people. And so it can't always be about me, but it also can't always be about you. So I think there is some submission in, like, oh, we can't do something that I want to do, but we'll do what you want to do. But we're not always going to do what you want to do. We're going to also kind of have this exchange, which requires that trust that you still want to be in this relationship. This trust that you're not going to hurt me or harm me intentionally. Like, I do think friendships have submission in them in order to kind of work together, but I don't think we think of it as submission. I think we just think of it as communication, being a good friend. But that foundation of trust, that foundation of honesty, and again, open communication is still going to be there. But to me, I think the major power at will, the major thing that you're focused on the common goal is a healthy friendship.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it might just appear easier in a friendship
Oh,
than it
yeah.
does when you're in a relationship. Because I think you kind of get more into your head about it when you're in a relationship versus a friendship. Because, like, I think you just set boundaries maybe easier with friends at times. And it might make it appear less submissive when you might be being submissive. But then also, it's typically, at least in my head, it's typically more equal. Like, I think people submit probably more equally in friendships, but it also depends on your relationship and that friendship. Like, you might want that or not want that. I don't know.
I wouldn't want a yes friend, like a person that just only does what I want to do and doesn't offer any resistance or difference of opinion. Like, being surrounded by yes people would be annoying.
But I think there are people who
there are
that.
Yeah. For me, I'll say that. For me, couldn't be.
Yeah, I don't know. That's submission and friendship. I can honestly say I've never thought about it. Like, I don't think about it that much in relationships. I can say I guarantee you I've never thought about it in a friendship. So, I guess what all of you've mentioned so far is definitely valid points. I would have to just defer to your judgments on that. I think a submissive friend, I guess the role isn't defined by anything other than personality types then. And that's
I would say an example of submitting in friendship would be like, Marcus, when we were not as close, I think I said something to you along the lines of, I feel like we're not really friends because of X, Y, and Z. And then you kind of took that as, I can change that. And then we became closer friends because of it. So it was kind of like you submitted to what I said and kind of adjusted in order for us to continue our friendship. Because there's lots of people who I said that to, and it was like, okay, and we aren't friends to this day. So there is that concept there. We don't use the word though.
Yeah,
it's not called submission. Yeah. But the concept is very similar, I would say.
Yeah, I think you just think about it differently.
Yeah, it's like a symbiotic relationship. At the end of the day, that's what submission leads to, is just symbiosis. Like, it's beneficial to both parties. And I definitely think our friendship has submission in it. Yeah, okay. No.
Were you going to give an example?
I was
like, well, yeah. So, for example, I live super far from everybody, but we're all here to do this podcast. And, like, we all kind of agreed to have the podcast here. I mean, one, because, I kind of had the space, but two, the fact that you guys still keep making the trip for us to do this means that you care about, even me and my opinions. And I don't know if I'm making a great point.
That's
but I do think, like, the fact that you guys make the effort and it's not always like, oh, Jess, you got to come up to where we are, or, oh, we're not doing that because you live too far. Like, we do take that into consideration, the fact that we live further and that, you guys might be closer. But I think the fact that we share the traveling distance, I think that is a way of submitting, oh, I don't really want to do this, but I do want to spend time with her. So therefore, I'm going to do that kind of thing.
I'm going to stop submitting.
You want to set all this
You're about to be closer. You're about to be living closer anyway.
I'm not. It's actually the same distance.
Oh my goodness.
Is it?
About to say,
it's the exact same distance.
Are you, everyone?
Yeah. Well, so
Not
like,
for me.
Well, yeah,
from
not Moyo.
I did my house to Jess's and your house to Jess's, 1 minute difference.
Traffic be like.
Well, that's the case, then you probably still the same amount of distance from me too,
I have to look.
huh?
Yeah.
Well, that being said, I think that was a good conversation.
Yeah.
I really do.
Thank
It
you,
was
Shaun.
One that Shaun was very hesitant about, but I think it was
Still
still
am.
good.
Yeah. I appreciate your
good.
perspective too.
Did I submit?
You
submitted.
did.
Shaun
You did.
submitted.
Yes, you actually.
He could have
did.
walked up and walked.
Well, yeah, I was like, man, I wonder how long I can go without
saying
saying
anything.
anything.
Looks at Shaun.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Not as long as I wanted. So,
Actually, Moyo just called you right out. Haven't heard from you
If
yet.
She didn't. I was going to.
yeah,
what,
I know.
What do you think, bro?
Well, I felt it. I was like, it's coming.
Yeah. But yes, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe.
Follow, share, comment,
Do all the things.
All
the
the
things.
things on all the platforms.
all of it.
Support us.
Submit to Google. All of your data is necessary.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
Love you.
Take care.